In 1377, fractures ground through Britain at an alarming rate. The growing divide was Angevin in nature, and the Hundred Years' War was already in progress between England and France. The conflict had already gone on for 50 years when Edward III gave Dallingridge the manor of Bodium in East Sussex. For the next half dozen years, the reputation of Sir Edward held sway amongst the nobility, even after Richard II came to the throne. But in 1385, Dallingridge was licensed to extend the meagre property and build a castle estate on the land in preparation for a French invasion which never came. But it was quadrangular in construction and boasting crenellated outer battlements. Bodium was so well fortified it didn't even need a keep. Norman technology was so deficient compared to Saxon that overconfidence might have been their greatest weakness, especially after the disaster of the Magna Carta. And in September 1399, Richard met his end through the machinations of Bolingbroke at Pontefract Castle. The claims to the crown was now divided. The Yorkists and Lancastrians, and again Bodium found itself a splinter shaved off to the side of that conflict. But through his marriage to Edward Dallingridge's granddaughter, Sir Thomas Lucknow inherited the castle in 1470. By 1484, most Lancastrians had either fled to Wales or were keeping themselves to themselves. Lucknow found himself under arrest for high treason, and a royal force was sent to sack the castle, where it once defended the country against its enemies. A sandstone wall now defended itself against the country, though the castle was not given back to Thomas Lucknow until after Henry VII faced Richard III at Bosworth Field. It wasn't until the ownership had passed to Thomas's son that it was fully restored to the family. But it was in 1542 that Roger Lucknow was at a loss of how to manage the lands in the same fashion as his father had. But after the castle had passed to the ownership of so many more, the grounds were tempered and secured, and the moat drained. Thereby, nearby sandstone was used to make repairs to the turret, and it was so distinctive to Bodium, though it was when John Tatton bought the fort in 1639 that the fashion for outdoor pursuits were not far off. This trend had come in from France, with the Normans, Norman nation that was once so feared for its intrusion into the British Isles. It was now being revered for its social aesthetics. Now, 1643, Parliament took it upon themselves to confiscate was once the country's defence, instigated a royal request. Because of John Tutton's royal sympathies and his recent defeat at Lewes, he was also fined £9,000, what would be today £9,000, as well as having his home snatched away. To alleviate some of the financial burden, in 1664, owner Tatton sold the place for a pittance. Bodium became the property of Nathaniel Powell. The fractures in the social fabric are now beginning to seem like rips. Bodium continued to be torn right down the middle. The estate eventually ended up with Nathaniel's daughter-in-law, Elizabeth Chipstow, now 1722. It was the start of the architectural Renaissance proper, and it was thus the perfect time to create new facets of inspiration for the future. The great green glamour of Bodiam Castle made its prime location in which to showcase this philosophy. Gardens and moat were once again restored and drained, and Sir Thomas Webster had instigated and orchestrated this Gothic revival, having purchased the castle in that year. It was 1829 when John Fuller bought the property and continued with renovations. That he created a new driveway, gravelling it in the process, renovating a gatehouse that had passed repair, or seemed to be past repair. In 1849, George Cubitt took Benjamin's reins and later had long drawn out bidding war with Lord Curzon, who also wanted the property. It seems that Bodium was up for grabs for everybody by this point. In the end, it was sold to the aristocrat by Cubitt's son when he inherited it. No longer would it be when an individual utilised the castle in wars for control of the country, but instead in battles for personal gain. Now, in the hands of the National Trust, Bodium represents the possibilities that can ascend from the deepest of devastating changes. I suspect the conflict to acquire Bodium will go on for another 50 years. Give us a good clicking.
Shakanaka.